I'm back today with the next in the off-the-shelf series. Today we're taking a look at an item called Wizard's Aide from 1977. Please stick around. I'm AZ Mountaineer, and this is our channel, Old School Rules, where we celebrate the community of old school gamers and grognards who like classic RPGs, miniatures, magazines, and everything that goes with it. The off-the-shelf series is an opportunity to share an item from my collection with the community. Whether this is something you've never heard of before, you just haven't had a chance to take a closer look, hopefully today's video gives you a little bit more insight to what this item is all about. Hope you enjoy the video. As I mentioned, we're taking a look at an item from 1977. This is a heavy stock cover, regular paper folded in half, stapled through the middle. It's called Wizard's Aide, and it's the product of Matt Whalley. I hope I'm saying that correctly. You might think with a title of Wizard's Aide that this is going to be mostly about spells and magic items, but it's not. It does contain those items, but essentially this is another alternate or supplemental rule system for Dungeons and Dragons. It says for role-playing games generically, but that's really, I think, what's been in 1977, probably what most people were playing, what most people were looking to modify. I recently did a video on the Arduin Grimoire, which was probably the most substantial and famous of those alternate rule systems that were published. But this is another one. It's only one book. That's all, as far as I can tell, that this guy ever did. So we'll take a look at what's in here and talk a little bit about his ideas and how those compare to other things that are out there. Here's the cover, and he says in here all of his art is done by a guy named Emmanuel Bautista. And so this is the cover. I love it. You've got this, he looks sort of like a Norse fighter, but then he's got his hands out and he's got like a spell. He's conjured up these dragonette or snake-like creatures, and then he's got a couple little demons down there by his ankles. And here's the rear cover, which is just a minotaur with a sword. He does not have a table of contents. I'll give you that here in just a second. So in terms of the sort of nuts and bolts facts, again, it's Wizard's Aide. It's from 1977. Matt Whalley does all the content, and Emmanuel Bautista does all the art. 56 pages. The pages aren't numbered in here at all, and like I said, no index, no table of contents. He also has a few charts. I'm not sure if they were misprint or just oddly, to me, seem out of place. So I'm going to try to impose a little bit more order for things that were out of place, and we'll cover them in a hopefully straightforward fashion. He's got his introduction, then he basically starts with character creation. So he's got birth tables, and we'll talk about, they have some various charts that roll out of your birth. His concept of skills. This is one where it really seems like it begins on page 10, but for some reason there's a few pages that go with it up on page 3. So I'll talk about all those in the same order. Abilities, height and weight for your characters. Then he moves into the combat, his system of saving throws, his spell system, his mystical magic, reincarnation, and name generation, which is a new one. I had never seen that particular concept before. I'll go back for a second just to tell you, his introduction is very short and sweet. It just says it's designed to supplement the fantasy role-playing games that are being played around the world, to be used to add greater depth and realism to your campaign. And so in addition to Emmanuel Bautista, he thanks for the art, he also mentions someone named David Fristrom. Doesn't say what he did other than just provided some helpful ideas. Oh, and I will share with you that Matt is from Chula Vista, California at the time that this is produced. I believe that there's two different publications of this document. This one here is a first printing that he put out himself, and then I think a company puts out a reprint of this a little later. Birth tables. And so this is basically his idea is you start by figuring out what type of character you're going to have. You roll your attributes, and then you pick what you want to do. I think he's doing 3d6 straight down the line, because he talks about most people are going to be humans by design in his campaign, also like Gary's philosophy, I think, as well. And so only if you have the appropriate attributes can you consider being, as he says, a non-human. Remember, in 1977, most likely he's only looking at the original wood grain or white box rules, maybe some of the supplements like Greyhawk or Blackmore. So he's got hobbits, dwarves, half-elves, and elves. Those are his only choices. So after you get your attributes, you roll D100, and I should say he's clearly, you'll see this throughout the rules, going with much more of a D100 resolution of things rather than D20. So you roll D100, then you look at basically what race you've picked, and you see your social class: commoner, craftsman, merchant, gentleman, or noble. Okay, and that's sort of the station into which you're born, and then you've got a chart for each of those, I guess you'll say, class that you're born into, and then you roll D100 again and see where you fit within that, right? So commoners are from serf, peasants, skilled, wealthy for commoners, craftsman, labor, apprentice, journeyman, top journeyman, master, which seems like that would actually have to be older to do, but whatever. Merchants, vendors, traders, shopkeepers, entrepreneurs, magnates, gentlemen on the impoverished end, well-off, wealthy, rich, and then nobles, same thing. Now on these charts, I'll go back, you'll see you get an amount of gold that you'd start with. You have a chance, a small chance, to actually have received your inheritance, which I assume means you would have been firstborn in typical medieval society anyway. When you get the roll, it must mean your father or mother are both deceased. And what he does, he says roll 2d6. If you get 2 snake eyes, that means you get the inheritance. Otherwise, you don't get your inheritance. And then the other thing is that on the right-hand side, it says skills, and he has table 1 or type 1, 2, and 3. It tells you how many of those you could get. All right, and so again, you'll see that differs depending on what what part of society you're born into. Right, so it's like the first group, commoners, they don't have any skills in group 3, and then like the gentlemen and the nobles, they don't have any from group 1, because those are more labor intensive. Group 1's labor intensive. So here are his charts, and I'm going to get myself out of the way so you can see them all. Okay, so on here you've got men, hobbits, dwarves, and elves, and again, they, based on their race, you have different subsets that you maybe could qualify for. Humans have the widest variety. And so group 1, again, more sort of labor. Group 2, some type of skill. And group 3, more of the pursuits, if you will, of the educated and upper class members of society. That's the way that's the way he breaks it down. He talks about these. He doesn't give explanations for all of them. He gives explanations for a few that he feels like he needs to explain either what they are or how he sees that playing out in in actual gameplay, right? So again, type 1, type 2, type 3 skills are listed here. These, like I said, these actually, for whatever reason, this little explanation, that's at the very beginning of the book. No idea why he had it printed that way. Maybe, again, just the way he put it together, or some weird fluke, but it makes more sense, I think, to have it back here. Okay. Next, he's got this concept of abilities, and I've mentioned, if you've watched any of my videos talking about other rule sets, or I've got a lot of videos about fanzines, which are amateur people sharing their thoughts on, and a lot of them share thoughts on how to modify the rules. This idea of abilities is a very common thread in a lot of 1970s, early 80s gamers. So they're trying to give a character a little something different to distinguish, other than just your stats or your choice of race or class. I like what he does really well, because one of the things he does is everything in here is balanced. So if you want to use these alternate tables, your character, and of course you got to make these people roll in front of you, you basically got an even chance of getting something better than normal or worse than normal, right? So it's not all just added bonuses or added skills. All right, so here's how he does it. You roll here, D100, and you roll 1 to 3, or you roll D6 in connection with your D100. If you roll 1 to 3, you're going to get the negative attribute. If you roll 4, 5, or 6, you get a good attribute. And they're if you look here, they're in parallel, right? So maybe you're better with horses. You heal a little faster, a little slower. And then there's a lot of different types of weapons that you're either a little worse than normal or better than normal with. And if you get a 91 to 100, now you're going to have an extraordinary ability. But same thing, roll to D6, 1 to 3, you're extraordinarily bad. 4, 5, or 6, you're extraordinarily good. Whoops. So here are those charts. Modifications of spells, which would be if you're casting, maybe they're more effective, or if you're saving against them, again, if it's a negative, You have a worse saving throw, positive, you have a good saving throw. Slow or quick learner, so that you add or you get an experience points bonus or subtraction. Here's an interesting one. Your flesh either tastes bad to monsters, so any monster that would chew you or bite you tends to let you go, or they really like the taste of your flesh, which means they're hardly ever going to let you go. Extraordinary bonus or negative on a particular type of weapon. Literacy, either you can't read at all, or any language you speak you actually know how to read and get bonus languages. All your attributes take a negative one, all your attributes get a bonus. Basically, you're particularly dexterous or not. You're particularly healthy, so extra constitution strength, or negative, so sort of on the sickly versus extra healthy, extra constitution kind of side. Then he's got just all the saving throws, and you can get a plus or a minus, a pretty big -4 or 3, +4 or 3 modification there. Ability to detect traps, ability to find magic, detect magic, and true sight, so like you can't be fooled by illusions. On the other side, almost always surprised, 1 to 5 you're surprised. Night blind, you really can't see unless you have a lot of light. So again, I think it's well done. On the extraordinary, it's really extraordinary, so maybe a little too good of a bonus, but the idea there is pretty good, and again was pretty common. So then he's got some very vanilla height weight charts here. You just roll to determine your height or your weight. And then we get into his section on combat, which I think is pretty well done. Again, the biggest thing you'll notice here is it's all done on a D100 instead of D20 basis. So you've got your level down the left-hand side, armor class, so it's just like D&D, but instead you're going to roll a percentage. And later he's got modifications to the percentage based on weapon, armor class, or skill bonuses. And every level that you go up, it modifies your percentages. The thing I don't like about his theory, at first level, every character class has the exact same percent chance to hit here, you'll notice. But the fighters go more quickly than clerics, magic users. And for some reason, thieves are omitted, so this might be so early he didn't even have the thief class in the game yet. And then he's got the same thing for monsters. So they're all on a D100 system. And he talks about the fact that you can convert D20 by just multiplying by 5 if you want to go through trying to do that. Here's his, like Gygax, he's got the weapon by armor class, and it gives a modifier for that. Same thing for weapons. His armor class definitions are basically straight from D&D. And now here's his damage. He just sets out the damage to his weapons. I didn't double check to see if this is exactly like D&D or not, but just looking at it, it looks like some of them are a little higher than what I remember. Some of them are a little lower. Some of them are about right. Then he has saving throws. Very similar, but again, he converts everything to percentage. And here are the charts. I think he has the same categories: poison, death ray, wands separate from staff and spells, stoning, which is petrification, and then breath weapons. All right, so the major difference here is his spell system. And if you've read alternate rule systems yourselves, fanzines, magazines, or watched other videos that I've done where we talk about the kind of things that people tended to want to change, right at the top, no question, is changing Gygax's especially magic user spell system, right? People did not like this Vancian magic. And they didn't like that magic users were so darn limited at low level, right? One spell once a day, or if you dig into the DMG, you stop and rest, maybe you can get a second spell later in the day, but really couldn't do much, right, at first level. Which Gygax, I think, I've seen Tim Kask talk about it, like 100% did that on purpose. But so this is a mana or spell point system, and then you can cast anything. If you have enough points, then you can cast any spell. So he sort of gets rid of levels, and everything is based on mana points. Your spell points is 2 times the prime requisite plus Constitution, so intelligence or wisdom for clerics, because they also have this mana system or spell point system. Then you divide that by, so you got this, 2 times your prime requisite plus your constitution, divide by 3, and then multiply by your level. So you've sort of got a base mana, and every level that increases, you get an extra set of mana points or spell points. And then you use it, and then when you're out, you got to rest. You got to rest to get them back. So here are all the magic user charts for spell points for the spells that were in his game. And so the easiest ones there, or the lowest level, there's some 1-point things: detect magic, light, hold portal, sort of non-combat ones, right? Charm person is 3, sleep is 4, and then as you go up in level, they go up and up and up. And just to give you an idea, so like what we consider second level spells, 5, 6, 7 points. Lightning bolt, fireball, 12 points, 14 points respectively. And then when you get way up there, you've got 80 points, 200 points, 90 points. So it gets pretty high at the higher end of the spectrum. And then you had the same thing here for clerics and druid spells. So he has a second system in addition to his mana point system that is sort of based on a chart. So let me show you that chart. So what you would do here is you look at the number. So like look at first level magic user, first level spell is 8. You take your level, you subtract your level from that number, then you roll 2d6, and you have to be under that. So at a first level magic user, 8 minus 1 is 7. So you roll 2d6, you got to be 7 or under. 7 or under, and the spell's successful. Otherwise, it fails essentially. And so let's look. Let's say you were a 5th level magic user. First level spells are a 4, so that's basically a negative number. It's automatic. That's the way I see it. It becomes negative, it'd be automatic success there. He has the same chart for clerics and druids. Then he has mystical magic, and basically his new magic items are, for whatever reason, are only rings. And so he's got a ring of magic detection, which is obvious. Flying, lets you fly. Water breathing, improvision. Trap detection, 75% chance of success. Poison detection, basically it's a piece of horn from a unicorn. If you put the white part of your ring into poison, it'll turn red if it's poison, if it comes in contact with poison. Magic reading lets you read scrolls and tomes, so even if you weren't a magic user, you could then use them. Ring of opening, I like this one. I don't know if it'd have like a big stone on it or just have it be metal, but like you wrap your ring against something that's locked and it'll open. Speaking, which lets you talk in any language. Ring of revenge lets you it's only one use. You call forth an invisible stalker who'll do whatever you want. True sight, see through illusions. Inversion flips all of your stats. So you take 18 minus whatever your number is, and that's what in all 6 of your stats you do that math problem and they flip. So if you had bad skills stats, they would become good stats, but otherwise your good stats are going to become pretty lousy. So that's, I think, more of a cursed item the way I would see it. Ring of reading, you can read any language. And the ring of reincarnation, one use. When you die, you'll be reincarnated. And that leads, and also he has a chart for rolling up your rings now with all of his new rings added into the percentages. Then he has a reincarnation chart, and he talks about how he does reincarnation. You can change your language. Obviously, you can come back as a completely different type of character, etc. And so here's his chart. Based on what alignment you are when you died, you roll there to see. So if you're lawful, you're most likely going to be lawful, but on a 97 to 100, your alignment shifts, and then you would go to one of these other 2 alignments and roll something from there. And finally, he's got a really unusual thing. I've never seen somebody do this before. This is his name generation charter system, just to help you out. And again, you roll dice to see what you're going to get, and you just sort of piece these things together. So you've got beginning consonants. He gives you a letter and a word, like what it would sound like, and then the intermediate, and then vowels, and then you sort of piece that all together, and that was how you come up with names. As I mentioned, the art in here is by Emmanuel Bautista, so let's look at the art just more closely just to celebrate that. So here's a drawing on the introductory page. It looks like two halflings are opening up a chest, but inside there's hands coming out after them. And then, I get myself out of the way. Then over here, this was on a page, I think, with an elf, and this is just a guy with a bow. And then here's this guy's on the ground. He's been killed, and this creature's feeding on him. I want you to just take a moment and look at this creature. You thought sturges were bad? Look at this thing. It's like an owl with a tail with a barb on the end, and then sort of like a giant mosquito proboscis, or maybe it's an elephant snout, I'm not sure which, on the front. Because whatever it is, it looks like he's got it stuck down in this guy's blood, you know, sucking it up. So anyway, these are pretty fearsome creatures. I guess you could stat those. And then this is on the interior front cover. He's got this, again, Norse warrior here. He's got a little halfling, and then his mage is casting something, and he's just put his magic missile or lightning bolt or whatever it is straight through this carrion crawler that came out unexpectedly and surprised everybody. Okay, so that's our look at Wizard's Aide from 1977. Another great example of some really thought out supplemental rules for Dungeons & Dragons or your favorite role-playing game. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you're enjoying the channel, our content. We've got some of these off-the-shelf videos. We look at art from, highlight the art of particular artists. We got fanzine videos every Friday where we look at amateur publications from the 70s and early 80s, and generally just try to enjoy and celebrate some of the awesome things that different people put together in connection with our hobby. I hope you're subscribed. If you've got friends who might be interested, please send them our way, and hopefully they can become subscribers as well. Y'all have a great day, and until next time, my friends, keep rolling 20s.